I'm not sure what's up with me lately, but I feel like I've done about a dozen update videos in the past few weeks. It's not a conscious decision on my part. It's just that I keep seeing news stories that relate back to these things I talked about in the past. So here's another one, and it's about porn. So obviously, I would like to start this video by thanking my patrons, because without them, I would not be able to make videos like this. Because in general, YouTube frowns upon topics such as porn, even if someone approaches it from a scientific standpoint, because sex is bad, okay? The advertisers don't like it, but my patrons do. You guys are the best. Like my most recent signups, Anarch, Martin, Raphael, Eris, Noel, Adam, and Polly. Thanks, pals. First, I'm going to get into the new news, and then I'll get to the update. A new paper published last month in the journal Social Forces explores anti-porn sentiment in the United States, examining 35 years of trends behind the people who are most staunchly in favor of banning the distribution of pornography. Back in the 80s, that was mostly religious conservatives who argued against porn based on morality. God hates porn. It's evil. It makes you a bad person. Therefore, we should outlaw it. But in the past decade, research shows that anti-porn advocates have increasingly used social and cognitive science studies to support their position. Does that mean that anti-porn activists have secularized? That's what this study looked into. This researcher, sociologist Samuel L. Perry of the University of Oklahoma, found that, in fact, over the years, Americans in general have become less worried about banning pornography, and the anti-porn crowd that remains has become almost exclusively biblical literalists. Every other demographic has pretty much lost interest in banning porn, except for the most fundamental of fundamental Christians. Perry told the Academic Times that these days, politicians cite science tactically, not sincerely. You can't say anymore, we want to get rid of porn because it's wickedness. But it's completely legitimate to say, we want to get rid of porn because it's a public health crisis like opioids or meth. But the science just isn't there. They are cherry picking to support their morality. Perry has previously studied the connection between Christian nationalists in the United States and contested science, noting how this group understands and accepts science, except in areas where the science challenges their staunchly held beliefs about the superiority of their own religion and culture. Porn has become one of those contested areas, and it's especially ripe for exploitation by biblical literalists because the science is not quite settled. There doesn't seem to be a really strong consensus on pornography being bad in our society among sociologists because you can't really prove a negative. So while it's not settled, there does seem to be a consensus that there just hasn't been enough evidence for porn to be declared some kind of public threat. It's just not considered a real problem. The evidence is not there. Just after the high school shooting in Parkland, Florida, lawmakers in the state legislature had the opportunity to consider gun control legislation 1 week after that horrific event, Perry told the Academic Times. They decided not to consider gun control legislation, but they did pass a resolution declaring pornography a public health crisis and to place In God We Trust on all campuses where students and faculty could see them. Something worth noting about this study, this was about who supports pornography bans, not about the people who support porn regulation or improving working conditions in the industry. For instance, I am an atheist who values science, even in contested areas. I do not see any compelling scientific evidence for the dangers inherent to pornography, and I do not see the value in banning it outright. I do, however, see value in protecting the actors involved in pornography, as well as other sex workers, stopping the spread of STDs in the industry, stopping sex trafficking, removing shame from the discussion of these things. And all of those things are complicated, requiring a lot of data and nuanced discussion and public policy changes to address. None of these things would be helped by complete prohibition of porn. Now, on to the update. 2 years ago, I did a deep dive on NoFap, the movement of mostly young men who believe that pornography and masturbation in general is bad for you. Bad for you personally as an individual, and also bad for society as a whole. I recommend that you go watch that video because holy shit did I fall into a weird hole, if you know what I'm saying. NoFap caught on in a big way on Reddit, where it was embraced by many non-religious people. There's a lot of atheists on Reddit. Even the founder of NoFap is an atheist. So where do these guys fit into the study, which found that the vast majority of anti-porn activists are biblical literalists? Well, the study only looked at surveys up until 2018. NoFap has only really caught on in the past 5 or 6 years, and even then, it's mostly been online. That said, just because you're an atheist doesn't mean that you can't fall prey to magical thinking. Many of the NoFap fans, as I stated in that video, literally believe that abstaining from porn and masturbation gives them superpowers. Literal superpowers. Also, we've seen a trend over the past decade or so of atheists, including prominent atheists, who, for lack of a better term, become useful idiots for biblical literalists. Just check out what's happened to a lot of skeptics and feminists in the United Kingdom, a shocking number of whom have joined with Christian conservatives to reject the science on transgender people in order to side with abject bigotry. Richard Dawkins being one recent example. This recently led to American Humanists stripping him of their Humanist of the Year award from like 30 years ago. I'm sure he's gutted. So while I think it's a great thing that the anti-porn brigade has shrunk down to this core group of theocrats, I don't think that means that they won't find new life among the credulous people who might have dropped their belief in God, but still held on to baseless anti-science moralism. Okay, so we've gone on a real journey during this video and covered a lot of ground. Let me just end with some of the main points. There's no scientific evidence that porn is inherently bad for individuals or society as a whole. Most of the people and politicians claiming to want to ban porn on the basis of science are cherry-picking biblical literalists. There are still many people who buy into that argument, even though they aren't religious. And just because you're correct about the current scientific consensus on pornography doesn't mean that you're not completely bonkers and you should probably log off the internet and go touch grass. Anyway, thank you so much. Please be sure to subscribe to my OnlyFans. I mean, Patreon.